San Francisco, California, April 18th, 2024. More than 100 years have passed, but the aroma of old paper remains. The constant disappearance of ink in these words evaporates thoughts that witnessed the fragility of life. Who represents our past? Who will tell our story? Who will honor those silent voices? On the morning of April 18th, 1906, the first jarring shock of an earthquake struck at 5:12 a.m. and lasted 26 seconds. Within a few hours, 52 fires had started. Before the flames were extinguished 3 days later, 478 people were dead, including the chief of fire department, Dennis T. Sullivan. The area burned was 4.7 square miles, which included all of the downtown territory. The entire alarm system went out at the first shock. Of the 600 glass wet batteries operating the systems, the earthquake broke 556 of them. 556 out of 600. From a report from fire alarm operator James C. Kelly to Chief Hewitt of the Department of Electricity.
Dear Sir, the shock began at 5:13 plus 10 seconds a.m. and I watched its duration at the clock for 19 seconds. When it became so severe, and there seemed such danger of the walls and ceilings of the building falling, that I ran to underneath the frame of one of the front windows as a place of greater safety. The vibrations still continued for some seconds as I remained at the window, and I saw meanwhile the southeast wall of the Tower of the Hall of Justice fall.
The street boxes during the 1906 earthquake were the primary means of communication for people to get fire department to respond to emergencies.
From a Los Angeles newspaper, May of 1906. Sightseers view ruins. The streets of the burned districts were thronged today with sightseers. Every train from neighboring towns on the peninsula and every ferry boat from the Bay Counties was packed with people eager to get their first glimpse of the city's devastation, and almost every third person carried a camera. Even in the face of tragedy, San Francisco residents know that this is a tourist town.
We are fortunate to have access to letters that Sarah Phillips, who lived in San Francisco at the time, wrote to her fiancé, George Jones, who lived in the East Coast. And we also have a letter that Sarah's housemate, Miss Simpson, wrote to George to describe the two women's experience during the earthquake and to give George some reassurance that everything was okay.
April 18th, 1906. My dear, I have written and wired you, but I do not believe you will receive either message. The wires are down with no prospect of the messages going through. At 5:15, we were awakened by a most dreadful earthquake. It lasted what seemed to be a space of 5 minutes. But, you know, time seems long in such cases. First I thought of it as so many of our others. But when everything began to fall, I sprang out of bed and with difficulty maintained my balance. Neither Miss Simpson or I were frightened. The city hall is gone. The dome is only a skeleton of steel. Bush Street was crowded, with people dressed and undressed. We prepared breakfast, for we did not know what was before us. We then walked out of Market Street. It was terrible. As it was unsafe on the sidewalks, the people congregated between them on the streets. At 6:10, we left the house and walked downtown. Oh, I cannot tell you the horror of it. I went to Pine and Sansom and saw 5 buildings burning. Wagons of all descriptions are carrying sick and wounded to places of safety. Light and water were turned off, or the water mains were broken and wires were down. I knew 113 was doomed, or so it seemed. I'm really afraid many lives have been lost. All of south of Market was ablaze, and the only relief was to blow up the buildings to stop the progress.
The way that most citizens contacted the fire department were through the pull boxes or the fire alarm boxes, which were located throughout the city. Within that fire alarm box, even though the person to initiate it, all they had to do is pull down on a lever, but inside of it was a Morse code device. So once the fire engine or fire truck came on the scene, they could actually open up the box and relay information back to Central Alarm, which was back then located on Oak Street. And they could give information like, we need a second alarm, or, you know, we're going to need an ambulance for the people here. And this was all done through the old telegraph system, which was incorporated within the pull box. Interestingly enough, the horses had all the fire alarm boxes memorized. So when a box would come in and the alarm bells would go off, the horses already knew where to respond to. But those street boxes are still a way of communication for someone who maybe doesn't have a cell phone, or maybe their cell phone died. All you do is you pull the hook.
But who was Sarah Phillips? Sarah Phillips was a survivor of one of the most tragic natural disasters in the history of the United States.
More than 3,000 people lost their lives in an earthquake that destroyed nearly 28,000 buildings, leaving 200,000 homeless people in San Francisco. After the 1906 earthquake, Sarah moved to Vermont with her fiancé George Jones, where she spent the rest of her life. Sarah's letters give a detailed narrative, highlighting the most critical events and how people lived through this tragedy. We will remember Sarah as a brave woman who, despite adversity, never gave up.